what I would recommend for the new author or the author starting out, restarting out is be acceptable to criticism, humble yourself and listen. Treat yourself like you're an A-lister. And
Mhm,
everything that you put out there to the utmost of professionalism
mhm.
and not until it's ready
Okay.
because there's no reason to rush. And you don't know where God is going to use you, when God is going to use you, or how.
Welcome back to the Business of Christian Fiction. I'm your host, Rachel Fehrenbach, and I'm joined today by Christopher Grayson, who is a novelist of over 20 novels and is a self-published author. I'm excited to talk to him today because he has been very successful in this career as a fiction writer. And I know that we are going to glean so much great information from him, but also be very encouraged and motivated to just continue this journey, this calling that we have on our lives to create these stories and share them with our readers. So thank you so much, Christopher, for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
So I wanted to just jump in with this question. Was self-publishing your first choice, or what was your journey that got you to that point?
It was actually my first choice because I wrote my first book when dinosaurs roamed the earth back when I was in college. And everything was brick and mortar, and I wrote Pure of Heart. And I sent it off to one publishing company, and then they got back to me 9 months later, I think, or maybe even a year later, and said they really liked it, but it wasn't right for their publishing house. Can she send it to a friend of hers at another publishing house? So I'm like, yeah, it doesn't stink, if they're going to pass it on. And it went on to another publishing house. And by that time, life had happened. I was changing careers already again from an actor. And I just went, yeah, I'm not going to go down this road. And I listened to all the naysayers. That was a big thing because I went from theater to computers. But in the
Mm.
meantime, I wrote the book and everybody was like, you'll never be an actor. You'll never be an actor. And then I blew my knee out dancing.
Oh,
And so theater was becoming very hard because it was such a bad injury. So I wrote the book and even writing the book, everybody goes, you'll never be a writer. You'll never be. And I listened and I went, okay, I have to be practical. And I got into computers. So then fast forward, um, I think 20 years, but because I was in my 40s, my wife wanted to write a book. And she goes, can you help me? There's this new thing, self publishing. And I'm like, not going to mess up your book. I'm
yeah.
not going to take it. It's like somebody saying, can you touch my painting? I'm like, no,
Yeah.
no.
Especially your
So I
spouse,
said,
right?
yeah. So I said,
Especially spouse.
I'll write something myself. And I wrote a mystery because I've always been a mystery junkie. I wanted to become a policeman when I was younger and always just, kind of obsessed with mysteries. So I wrote a mystery and self-published it and absolutely loved it. Looked at the traditional publishing.
Mhm.
And part of me was kind of like, whenever there's a gatekeeper and they kind of get like, because there's
Mhm.
still so much of that. And
Mhm.
almost like a pride thing. So I started out by choice, completely by choice. And then I thought about going the publishing route. And some people wanted me to change away from my values. Like, I don't swear in my books, I don't have graphic sex or violence. And I don't
Mhm.
think you need at all. And one of the examples that I use is a friend of mine watched an Eddie Murphy movie on TV, and he didn't realize it was dubbed. And it was dubbed so well, he didn't know it was dubbed, or his eyesight's going and he didn't know it was dubbed. So then he sees the movie in the Walmart bin for like $5. So he brings it home for family movie, but it's not dubbed. And he said to me, he's like, it was so good, but there weren't any swears. You don't need them. And I'm like, you know what?
Mhm.
You really don't. And like one of the most horrifying things I ever saw was in a Bruce Lee movie, and you didn't see it. You heard the bad guys take these guys to a sawmill,
Mhm.
and you heard it. And I'm like, ugh. And then I realized your mind really paints the picture. So sometimes
Yeah.
when in the book, I think it's realistic, where I think it's realistic that somebody might swear. I will write Jack swore.
Mhm.
And, I might say, "Good golly gee willikers," and then you might be like, "Beep, beep," but somebody will fill it into their level that they can
Right.
handle, that's almost, like, appropriate for them.
Yep.
So I found out that you don't need it. And I was surprised that a lot of publishing houses wanted me to add that in. Like I was approached to, and I'm like,
So
no,
I'm guessing those were secular publishers that you approached,
yes.
which is
And I said,
interesting.
no, I'm not going to do it. And there's a lot of, I think that, pride. Like I'd love for my books to be like on the, the prominent shelf in the bookstore. But when you look at it, most of the money now is coming from ebooks. When
Mhm.
you don't have the printing books, a lot of the things are coming. My books are available in the bookstore because a lot of them are carrying them now because people go in and ask for them. So,
Right.
getting that, and I don't have to compromise. Now, there are some publishing houses with they're totally fine and open to it. Like, I've been approached about one of my books, The Girl Who Lived, about the screenplay by a couple of different people, and I wrote it up, and I was surprised because the person that approached me, and they said they might ask you to add in swears and to sex it up, and I go, well, that's a deal breaker. And I
Right.
said, "But I'll still talk to him." And I
Mhm.
went and I talked to him, and I said, "No, this is what I do." And the person said, "Oh, you're a man of faith. Good for you." And I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh, say that again. I really I like that." And I think there's a real, and I think God rewards that when you
Mhm.
stick to, because it's His principles that I'm going on. And I'm not faulting anybody else. I'm not throwing stones, but it's my own personal conviction that I don't do that. So I'm not going to compromise because I want families to be able to read it too.
Mhm. So, did you ever consider approaching a Christian publisher?
I've been approached many times, and I always keep the door open, and then I'll listen. And you really need to be prepared, especially because like now it's like the shopping the scripts around, so that opens up a whole different can of worms. And
Mhm.
with that thing, like even I was approached by a audiobook company, and they
Mhm.
said, "Oh, will you do this?" And then I got the contract, and I got horrified because the contract was like they had first right of refusal for like all of my stuff. And it was so confining. And I said, this is nothing about what we talked about. And I'm very open. And I believe that a workman's worthy of their due. Like
Mhm.
I've got a guy that does my audiobooks that's fabulous, and a girl that does it absolutely fabulous. But this one was going to be for Kiku. And she's, half Japanese, so I wanted the unique voice for it, and instead of me trying to go out and find a voiceover person that I can do it, I said, "Hey, you know what? And with the time involved, I'll listen to the company." And I'm so glad that I avoided that. We could talk
Mhm.
later about some of the things about avoiding those traps, but
Yeah.
they're out there, you know?
Yeah. So you decided to go to self-publishing route, and I believe I read somewhere that was like 15 years ago you put out the first.
We thought 2013, I think, so it'd be like
Okay.
11, 12 years ago
It's been a
that
while.
it's yes,
So
it's
you
been a
were
while.
really courageous because that was like self-publishing was really new then.
Oh, it was the Wild West,
It
and
was
so
a
it was neat, and I owe some debts to, like, some people, and they're not, like J.A. Conrath, and there's so many people out there. He was one of the first guys that did the self-publishing. Some authors got burned by the traditional publishing,
Mhm.
and J.A. Conrath was one of the first, independent, Amazon featured self-publishers, and he put all his numbers out, he put how he did it, he shared, and you'll find a lot of people do that. I mean, some people are like, "Oh, these are my secrets and stay away," and they won't
Mhm.
share with you, and I can understand, but there's so many resources out there for people to do it,
Mhm.
and I think the help has been absolutely fabulous. One of the things that's really funny is Amazon was very helpful. Like a lot of people that I talk to were like, "Oh, the evil empire," but they'll treat them like that when they call,
Mhm.
And I think that if we try, one, humble ourselves to esteem others higher than ourselves, that
Mhm.
people are responding kind. So I've had wonderful experiences with Amazon, with talking to them and asking. Like, I'll ask, "Hey, any programs I can jump into? Hey, do
Mhm.
you have anything? Do you need somebody to do this?" Um, so yeah, it was, once I did the self-publishing and saw there wasn't the initial success. Like, I
Mhm.
went bankrupt once. I used to make church videos, and I had a video company, And it was so hard to quit doing that because it's one of those things. It's like you're working for the Lord. How do you quit? Making
Yeah.
Christian videos. How do I, you
Mhm.
know? So I gave it a year and I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a year. If I don't make money from it, because I had, married, I have 2 kids. I'm already
Mhm.
working 2 jobs and I'm doing this as a third job.
Right.
And it wouldn't make the money that I needed it to make. I couldn't, and I think I make great videos. But sometimes you think, oh, this is a godly thing. It doesn't necessarily mean you're supposed to do it.
Yes.
So quitting is hard, especially for
Mhm.
somebody like me, where my mom said, raised 6 kids all on her own. She's like, you never quit. You figure out a way to do it.
Right.
And I'm sure she didn't mean you never quit, but I took it as you never quit ever, anything. So I had to quit that. And I had actually done a video deal and I went bankrupt. And
Mm.
because I'm not a good businessman, I found out, and you're supposed to take like 2/3 before you do it. And then the product got switched and the deal folded up. And I had put too much money out in the video production of it. And I just went
Mhm.
belly up. So I went never again.
So you
Writing.
learned from that. You're like, I'm gonna approach writing differently. I'm
Yes.
gonna
So I
take those
said,
lessons learned.
and sometimes people get like so freaked out about failing now. Like
Mhm.
everybody's like, you gotta come home with gold when it's like that. There's a movie. If you're not first, you're the first loser. And it's like, what? So I'm trying to fix my lawnmower and I come back in and my wife goes, how'd it go? I go, they failed spectacularly. And I did it. Like I sheared off all these bolts. But you know what I learned? And that's the important part is learning and moving on and learning and what lesson you can learn from it. Like in the video production, it's actually like how God preps your way. Like I learned storytelling from theater. I learned character development from theater. So even though I blew my knee out, God had something different in mind for me. So like
Mhm.
the computer stuff, I'm very modular. So I
Mhm.
lay out, I do a lot of plotting. And I
Mhm.
learned from that, from the video production. I had to do so many stories, so many scripts, so many things. I would grade my past. Now looking back, I when I went bankrupt, I wasn't like, "Thank you, God, you're teaching me." But maybe I should have been when he says all joy and all trials. So I try to learn from them and then move on. But I had to look at the writing the same way. So I wrote Girl
Mhm.
Jack, I wrote Jackknife, and then I kept on just taking the money I made from the book and folding it back in. Because you can do a lot of this stuff. There's so many tricks to do it free. It takes longer, but
Right.
there was a director, he directed Spy Kids and other movies, Rodriguez, I believe, and he
Yeah,
said
I
there's
forget
2
his name
ways.
too.
Yeah, 2 ways to solve a problem. You can break out the money hose or you can
Mhm.
get creative. So if you don't have a money hose, you gotta get creative. So that's why with all the marketing, I get creative and you do stuff behind the scenes. I had to come to a point where I said, I don't know if the books are gonna take off. And it was actually after Jackknife. Girl Jack wasn't hitting it. So I took everything and I prayed about it. And I was working at the lousiest job with the meanest manager that you can imagine. And I put all my money onto this free run for the book. And it changes. Sometimes free used to be really good, and then it goes out of favor, and then it comes in. So you need to pray about everything. So I put it in free. I prayed about it. I took all the money that I had made from the book and I put it into this ad campaign. And right when it took off, I hit #1 free, and Amazon's computer, which hates me, that's the toughest part of this whole thing. It found an old copy that I had published because I originally was gonna be wide. So I put
Yeah,
it out something, but then I took it down and said, "No, I'm gonna be exclusive to Amazon."
right.
Well, it found that old copy that wasn't published and said, "Oh, you're violating the non-exclusive." And I'm like, "No, I'm not." And it kicked me out right when I was #1. But then what happened is I got all the rank of being in free and moving all those free books, and then it switched me over to getting paid for it.
Mm.
So I got all of a sudden all this visibility and I got a ton of money that came in. And I'm like, yay, yay. Because I left on my walk from work crying because I'm like, I guess God doesn't want me to be a writer. I'm going to give it up. I'm not going
Mm.
to give it up. I'm going to turn it into a hobby, you
Okay.
know, not treat
Mhm.
it as a separate job. Because there are so many people where you're like, you know what? If you want to write, you don't have to like sell your house and move
Right.
to France and wear a weird hat, and be like, oh, I'm an artist. You don't have to do that. You can start small. There's no rushing it, but I don't know why people always, I think they're their own worst bosses. They put like a whip at their back and they're like, I gotta do that. And it's like, take your time, learn the things. So that's how it's worked. And then even from then, like I remember it was funny. I went to see J.A. Conrath. He was a keynote speaker. And I actually had the advertisement on the back page of the whole writing conference. And I come over to a table and I sit down and these people said, are you traditionally published? And I'm like, there's 12 people. I'm like, no, I'm self-published. And they literally, huh, and they start talking amongst themselves. And I'm like, that's not very nice. But I'm like, I let it go. And then, so one woman wants to throw me a bone. She goes, do you have an agent? And I turned down some of the biggest agencies. I'm like, no. And then, hmm. And then J.A. Clark gets up to be the keynote speaker and he goes, you know what? He goes, a friend of mine's here and he is crushing it. And so The Girl Who Lived was #1 on Amazon at the time.
Okay.
So he's like, Christopher Grayson, stand up. And it took all of like a heavy dose of grace not to be like, look around the table and go, how do you like me now?
Right.
What I did, but it's so weird that people get like that and they want to be like
Hmm.
respecters of, persons. I'm always going back to the basics. Like I was in the bookstore with my son and I picked up How to Write Mysteries for Dummies.
Hmm.
And just to go, because I am such a firm believer and everybody can make mistakes. Like when you see like parachuting instructors and they forget to like do
Yeah.
something, I go, you know what? Go over the basics, go over the basics. So I pick it up and this guy comes over to me and he goes, so you want to be a writer? And I think I had like 15 books out at the time. And I'm like, no, yeah, I love writing. And he just talked down to me the whole time and he left. And my
Oh,
son, who was young at the time, he looks at me and he's like, you're not going to tell him who you are? I go, no, no. Why? You
uh,
know, why? So, but other people, I love sharing and spurring people on. I belong to a
yeah,
writers group with some great writers.
definitely. I wanted to circle back to the fact that you're trying to navigate being in a crappy job and wanting to be a writer. I'm assuming you wanted to go full time as a writer, then you
I
wanted to
did.
leave your job. But you had to take the financials into consideration because you had a wife and kids that were depending on you. I'm not sure if your wife was working at the time. Even then, like you have needs. I
Yes.
find that it's really interesting, but there's something I see come up in um especially the Christian fiction space. I've noticed there's a lot of women who are writing and
Mhm.
oftentimes they're doing it in their spare time, right? They're doing it in their cracks of their time and they are not worrying too much about the business side of things because they're not looking for it to replace their income. But then because they're not paying attention to the financial business return on investment, they get themselves into situations where now suddenly they're putting all this money out to publish their books because sometimes they're paying to go to writing conferences. They're paying so that they can pitch to editors. They're paying for all these things, the hosting of their websites and this and that and all the things. And so they get themselves where money is just going out the door towards what has essentially a hobby because it's not making any money back. But they feel this catch in their spirit about like, well, I don't want to treat it too much like a business because it is a ministry. Like this is the thing that God's called me to. Did you ever wrestle with that tension or with specifically with writing? Or did you see it more of a black and white, like I need to provide for my family? So if God is calling me to this, then he needs to make it abundantly clear with money coming back in.
No, I think with everything, you have to look at it that you're a steward and you need to be a steward of your time. And I'm not faulting if somebody goes like this, hey, and they have a boat, I say knock yourself out. But if they have a boat at expense to their family, you
Mhm.
know, I'm like, you know what? That is totally wrong. I can easily start blowing money, spending money. And what I did, like, I used to write and I felt compelled. Like, I really felt called to become a writer. Now, when I write, like in my books, I never try to jam Christianity down anybody's throat. It's funny, my book that has the most Christianity is The Dark, which is a post-apocalyptic story with monsters and everything else, but there's an Amish girl in it.
Mhm.
And oh my gosh, it just flows out naturally from her. Or I had a
Right.
minister and he gave a full salvation message in the book, and it was at a funeral and it was just natural and coming. And I think that sometimes that's where even like Christian filmmakers make a mistake where they go, I want to preach and I want to do it in a film. And it's like, well, are you called to be a filmmaker? Because there's nothing wrong with being called to be a filmmaker. If you're a filmmaker, you can be a Christian filmmaker. And then the whole thing doesn't have to be 100% like there's so many books where all of a sudden it was like God shows up and does a miracle and the thing,
Mhm.
and I'm like, yeah, can that happen? Yes, it can, but sometimes it makes not the best reading or the best entertainment. So you need to really put forth what you're doing. And I know a lot of Christian writers who use it as an excuse to ignore their families, to put
Mhm.
blankly. And they'll be like, no, I'm sorry, I'm writing. Leave me out, kid. The kid's like, Mom, Dad.
Right.
And they do it. So I really think that you have to judge. If it's a hobby, then those writing conferences, you better make sure that you had the time and it's actually treating it like a hobby. Because they're getting the best of both worlds. They're spending money like it's a business and they're treating it like a hobby.
Yeah.
It bothers me to no end when just people don't, one, just do their best. And then two, especially Christians don't do their best. If you're going to pick up the Christian banner,
Mhm.
okay, you better put the work into it. Cause some people go,
Right.
God wrote this poem. And I'm like, I wouldn't put his name on it. And you didn't do the due
Yeah.
diligence that you should do. And I'm not putting myself up on any pedestal. I just try to be like the blind man in the story that I go, you know what? I don't know, but I was blind and now I see. So I can
Mhm.
say, this is what I did. So I wrote my first 3 books in the bathroom with my laptop on a hamper because
Mhm.
that was the only place I could write. And I woke
Mhm.
up at 4:30 in the morning and I wrote. There was a story, The Great Escape. It's a fabulous story, real story about World War II escapees. And there's a
Mhm.
character in it, Charles Bronson, and he was known as the Tunnel King. And he was going to break out the day before the Great Escape. Instead of going through the tunnel, he was going to go under the wire. And his friend is like, "What are you talking about? You've dug 18 tunnels." And he goes, "I'm claustrophobic ever since I was a little boy." And he goes, "Well, what are you doing?" He goes, "Got to get out of this camp. That's why I dig. I dig to get out of the camp. That's why I write. One, the
Mhm.
story has to come out. And then two, how bad do you want it? Like, I know those writer conferences, that guy, J.A. Conrath, he offered to help. He said, come up to my room. I got beer if you drink beer. I got water if you drink water. Come on up. I will talk to you. Spend as much time as you want. And then I said, I'll do it too. And he goes, Christopher Grayson will be there too. 6 people came. This is a huge writers conference. And
Right.
there are so many people where you go like this. Like, I know people, I go, sure, I'll help you. And I'm all excited. And then crickets. Like, I
Yeah.
had a friend, his wife wrote, and he wrote, he goes, "You know what? I'm gonna stop asking you." He goes, "My wife asks you." And every time you go, "Sure, I'll help her." Anytime, mention it, and I bring that back to my wife, and he goes, "You're in your 4th book, and she hasn't started the chapter." And I go, "Do you really
Yeah.
wanna do it?" Like my dad, I never knew him. He died when I was a month old, but he had an expression, acta non verba, that I live by, deeds, not words. So someone
Mm. That's
hey,
good.
yeah, I want to write. Even if you're doing it as a hobby, you still need to be like, if you ever look at like pilots, like amateur pilots, they're
Mhm.
so engineer like. I'm not like that at all. I'm not like lean back and see what happens, press this button. But when you're flying a plane, you need to be. And
Mhm.
if you have somebody using a firearm, they are buttoned down and serious about it. And I think if you want to go into any craft, whether it be painting, whether it be anything, and I find that in any craft there is that element. Like I used to you shoot a bow, target shoot,
Mhm.
and I could only afford like the Robin Hood type one. And I would go, and there would be these guys at the archery range, and I didn't mean to get him mad, but one
Mhm.
guy had these things, and they look like pom poms on his bow. And I'm like, "What's with the pom poms?" He's like, "Those are bow silencers." And he had a laser sight and like all this stuff, and I killed him shooting. And I'm
Mhm.
like, but he bought the best of the best of the best of the thing,
Right.
and then, it's gonna be like an exercise bike, and it's gonna sit and gather dust, and And
Yeah.
unfortunately, a lot of people that do that with the writing, that's what happens to it. They're not really serious. And because really, what do you need?
It sounds like you didn't have to get over the hump of if I put a book out there on my own, it's not as valid as if it was accepted by a traditional publisher. It sounds like you kind of worked through that and got over that and moved on.
Yes. And I'm not minimizing like this woman, and I get it a lot. She's written the book. It's written, and they're afraid to put it out. And I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, you got the book, you have the thing. And then I'm like, you
Yeah.
know what? Get some beta readers, put some
Yep.
stuff out. We're supposed to, as Christians, be shrewd as serpents and harmless as doves. In the writing world, there are so many charlatans and wolves out there. Like,
Yeah.
this is one of the things you have to get over. I hate criticism. I want to be
Uh-huh.
patted on the head and
Yep.
say, well, that's the best. But if you just get yes people around you, the
Yeah.
book goes out there and then you get the criticism. And I don't want
Oh,
that.
so true.
And
So
I
true.
hate that worse. So what I do is I'll do beta reads, I'll do anonymous beta reads, and I'll put myself under a different name so people don't
Okay.
look me up and they don't know who I am. And
Okay.
it's on those that sometimes are really tough because you get the people that come out of the woodwork and they're like, no, I could come alongside you and write this with you. And
Yeah.
you're like, hold off a minute. So those are some of the things. And I'm trying to point out because of your question really is good about like the author beware. Like
Mhm.
I just got one a few weeks ago, and again anonymously, it was from a former law enforcement person that wrote a book. And they said, what do you think about this company? And I said, I never heard it. And then I Googled it, and it was like author beware came up
Mhm.
with the results. And I'm like, come on, dude, you're a con.
Yeah.
Google it. And he goes, well, do you think that's just some people got burned and like it might be? And you could hear the hope in his voice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's not going to be different for you. You
Right.
know, where there's that much smoke and there's complaints to the Better Business Bureau, trust and verify, Ronald Reagan used to say.
Test
Dang.
and verify. That's good.
Yeah.
So I would love to go a little bit more tactical, like kind of switch our conversation a little bit more tactical here. I'm you have been very successful, which is very cool. It's inspiring to me even. We hear it's possible to be successful as an indie author, but sometimes when you're in the day to day doing the hard work and you're like, is this making any difference? Right. And you're like trying to get reviews and you're trying to get people following you on social and trying to get books sold. Sometimes it can be really discouraging and, you know, you're in that messy middle trying to make it through. But you have been successful. And I'm going to read a little bit from your bio. It says, for less than $100, Christopher published his first novel, Girl Jacked. With prayer, dedication, sweat, and tears, Christopher became an award winning Wall Street Journal bestselling author of mystery, action, and thriller novels. Recognized as one of the top 100 Kindle authors of all time, his acclaimed novels have now sold over 3.5 million ebook, print, and audiobooks. That number, when I read that the first time, I was just like, holy cow, that's amazing. And I know this is over 15 years. I know that, but I would love for you to elaborate on that phrase, the prayer, dedication, sweat, and tears part, because obviously success didn't just happen to you. You worked for it. And I know that my audience and I are both wondering, like, what are the inputs? What did you do? What was the work that
Well,
led to that success?
it's really important to remember that just because you're not successful doesn't mean you're not like the best writer out there. There are so many artists and so many authors that get success after their lifetimes. And you don't know where God is going to use you, when God is going to use you, or how. Can you imagine like Charles Spurgeon, huge fan, huge
Yeah.
fan of Charles Spurgeon. He said that he got saved when he was walking by a church in the winter. And the church actually, they were going to close it because of the snowstorm. The pastor couldn't come. And one of the guys was like, I'll give the sermon. And if it wasn't for that guy doing that sermon, like some guy just reached out to me about the girl who lived, and he read it when he was in rehab. And I went through 5 rehabs,
Hmm.
and I put that on paper. And now he gets out copies. He's given out 10 copies. And I'm like, I don't care if I only sold 10 copies. I really don't. I mean, I would be bummed to go, oh my gosh, I did all this work, but do I really have faith that God wanted me to write that book? Because it's kind of like you do stuff and you don't know how it's going to be rewarded, how it's going to be looked at. Are you going to get the reward on the back end or are you going to get the reward now? I am unbelievably humbled, but I am also so grateful. Like you just had 2 kids come in and you had 1 kid down and injured. So you have children and you're taking the time for this. I prep for the interview out of respect for you. I try to put everything into putting a good product out there because you have everything from Angry Birds to Netflix to just life sucking
Right.
up their time. So you
Right.
really need to put them first. And that's the thing about like success is people have like the total warped thing. Like when I started, authors didn't want to give stuff out free because they were like, my work
Hmm.
has value.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm not saying my work doesn't have value. When I was doing research, I met this Amish guy who was such a wonderful man and he made furniture. And I went in and I talked to him and I didn't know anything about the Amish. And, I try to respect everyone. Like, I don't care who you are. I try to
Right.
respect you. Even if you're polar opposite of me, I want to
Hmm.
treat you with respect because that's what I'm called to do. Even if you're an enemy, I got to love you. So I go in
Right.
and I talked to this guy and I said, I don't know if you consider me a Christian, but I
Hmm.
consider you a Christian because my
Yeah.
test is just Jesus. But even if not, will you talk to me? And he's like, oh, yeah. He goes, do you believe in Jesus? And I'm like, yes, I do. He's my savior. And he's like, great. So we start talking and he had so many stories. I go, I'm going to cut my mustache off. I'll put one of the hats on and I'll go around with you and I'll be your brother from New York. And he's laughing, but he ended up giving me a little writing desk, a little foldable, like unfoldable one, because I gave him a book. And I said, no offense to my book, but this isn't a fair trade. Like,
Right.
at
Yeah.
all. And so I guess the point was I'd give the book away for free to let
Hmm.
people try it. But so many people won't do that. It's kind of like you can't outgive God. But I'm not giving out free hardcovers, because I don't
Right.
have the money for that. If I had the money for that, I would do that, but I don't. Um, so
So you're making strategic decisions based off of analyzing where's your profit margin. Some things you can give away for free and other things no. That's just a hard no on those because at the end of the day, this is your job. This is how you're putting,
yeah,
food on the table. So you gotta be wise, right? You gotta make sure that you're taking
yeah.
care of your family.
And if you can't do it to a professional attitude, don't do it. Like it's kind of like special effects. Like you could get a professional cover no matter what, but you
Hmm.
might not be able to get like the mermaid jumping out of the water with a thing because
Yeah.
it might look hokey. So you know what? Don't do the hokey. Look at that whole Twilight Saga with an apple,
Hmm.
on a hand. It's a pretty simple cover.
That is,
Okay,
yeah,
it
you're right.
sold it sold books. So what I would recommend for, like, the new author or the author starting out and restarting out is, 1, be acceptable to criticism, humble yourself and listen. So, some criticism you ignore. There are some people out there that are just the faith quenchers, and they
Mhm.
wanna just tear you down. But there's some criticism that's tough to hear, but you need to hear it. So, I used lots of beta readers. And again, you can either break out the money hose and pay beta readers and get them back on Fiverr, and that can get wicked expensive.
Mhm.
Or you can go hat in hand and you go begging and you can find, ex English teachers. And I got an editor that used to work for a professional editing company and they wanted her to retire and she didn't want to retire. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I would love you. And there
Mhm.
are teachers out there. There are so many avid readers out there. I have beta readers proofread for me.
I worked in editing right after college, and it was the ongoing, like, bane of all of our existence that no matter how many times we put an article through all of us, everybody looked over it more than there's, like, 4 of us, and we all looked over it 2 or 3 times, and it would still go to publication. It was
And you go,
something that
how
got
did
missed.
yeah, you go, how did I miss it?
Yeah.
So I cut myself a lot of slack in that. Some
Yeah.
people don't. I got a review once. I hit a missing comment and it knocked me off the page. Wow, that was
Talk about
dramatic.
drama.
Yeah. But you treat yourself like you're an A-lister. And
Mhm.
everything that you put out there to the utmost of professionalism.
Mhm.
and not until it's ready,
Yep.
because there's no reason to rush. And you keep hammering stuff and folding it and hammering it and folding it until it's ready. Because so many
Mhm.
people, I don't know why, they rush it out the door before it's done.
Yep.
Like, look at Disney's new Snow White film that's
Yeah.
not out yet. Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard that they've reshot the ending 6 times. That's like,
Oh my goodness.
they do it, they keep it in a bubble, and then they film it. It's like, how come you don't get a beta reader? Can somebody
Yeah.
read the thing that's actually giving you good feedback? I
Mhm.
mean, then maybe that'll save everybody going on location, bringing out all this stuff, because it's
Right.
millions. They're talking like $35
Right.
million. I'll be honest, like some of the first Jack books aren't as strong as I'd like them to be, because
Mhm.
I wrote them 15, like
Right.
now, like
You grow as a writer by practice, by doing, right? And so the more books you put out there, the more feedback, you're not writing in a bubble. And I think that is true. I loved what you just said that about producing in a bubble is dangerous because if you don't ever bring it to somebody, you can't see where your blind spots are, right? Like you can't see what you're missing. You can't see where it needs improvement. And so I think writers have a problem with this. We're like so afraid to share it. And then we don't get good feedback that can strengthen our craft.
yeah, and that's like the first thing that you really need, and get a hard attitude and don't take it personally.
So I have a couple questions to ask you as far as like what was useful and what wasn't. I think it's good to hear from those who have gone before us, like what was useful. And I understand like it's really hard sometimes talking about what works and what doesn't work in the publishing space because things are changing so rapidly, especially in the online marketing world. What worked 2 years ago, doesn't work now. And so when we find that with like social media trends and all that jazz. But you published your books, you're self-publishing them. I'm assuming you're using like KDP or Ingram or something like that. Did you print the
I
books off and then sell them, or did you go through on demand?
No, I went through KDP and I went
Okay.
through Ingram, but like one of the funny stories, and it's a good example of how hard I worked. So
Okay.
the Girl Who Lived cover is such a hit because the cover's so important. So I knew the cover was so important. So I
Mm-hmm.
soaked the thing in prayer, and even the book formatting. I went to the libraries, I went to bookstores, I took pictures of books, and I
Mm-hmm.
went, what does this book look like? What does it feel like? How does it feel when you open it? And I kept printing it and reprinting it, and then I looked at it and I go, "Oh, the spline, I'm missing that little symbol on there at the bottom," because you wanna make it A. So it got to the point when I knew it was successful, I went into Books A Million, I put it up on the shelf, and somebody came over and picked it up, and they were gonna buy it, and I'm like, "Yeah."
Right.
And so then I'm like, "It's my book."
You know what? I love that you did that because I think that's something we don't talk enough about, that our, like, counterparts do. Like, when you're talking about, people who are artsy more like in the crafting world, like, they
Yep.
trial their products, right? They, like, tweak them, they fine-tune them over and over again, and, I think we kinda think of books more as, like, one and done, and we don't approach it with that same sort of, like, "Let's just keep tweaking things a little bit. Let's just keep messing with it and trialing it and really getting a feel for how the product is at the
I
end of the
will
day."
Well, I'll tell you because it's an ebook and it's no longer a secret. With Girl Jack from the beginning, I listened to it, I had it edited a few times because I put it out, and then I made the mistakes of it went out, too early, some stuff I didn't know, and then I had an editor, and in all fairness to them, they can have their opinions, and they didn't they I went with their ending, and it wasn't
Mhm.
resonating, and so since it
Yeah.
was an ebook, I changed it, and I changed the killer,
Exa
and then like Girl Jack, I changed it a number of times. Like if you find an original copy, you got a different killer, you got a different opening. And I had little things like, you know how like there's a famous thing about hand shooting first in Star Wars. Well, I had one scene with Alice in the story, and she slaps a girl, and she slaps the girl because the girl's going to slap her, and
Mm.
Alice is quicker on the draw. I have no problem with that, but there were a bunch of readers that had a problem with that. So then I had to wait, and I had to do it that the girl actually slaps Alice, and then Alice goes to slap her, but Jack grabs her. And then the readers loved it. And I didn't get it, but it really affected how they looked at Alice. And like there were some things like Like, I didn't follow, and it's not, I don't follow formula now, but there are some things like you need to get the reader to love the character. You have to.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
there are some things because I wanted you to know Jack at his worst. So you're seeing him at his worst, but then people didn't like him because they didn't know him.
Right. Right.
So
Like
there
a
was a lot of stuff that if I had done the beta reads, if I had done the
mhm.
homework. Also, but that Girl Who Lived, it then got picked up by Ingram as the book that they gave out for this is how you should self-publish a book.
That's
Became
probably
like,
why I'm like, I've seen that cover before, and I couldn't figure out
yeah.
where I'd seen it.
And it, but again, I give all the credit to God. Like there were so many answered prayers from that cover. Like I make my own. So I made part of it, gave it to a company that then ended up making it for me. Then I wanted to use them again, but there was a communication problem going back and
Mhm.
forth with them where they wouldn't pick up the phone and talk to me. Everything had to be email. And
Yeah.
it was driving me nuts. So I looked for another cover designer, and all of a sudden, this guy sends me a cover that has elements of my cover in it. And I'm like, what are you sending me my cover? You know?
Right.
And the guy's like, oh no, I made your cover. And I'm like, no, you didn't make my cover. This other company did. He goes, they hired me. He's on the other side of the planet. I'm
Oh
like,
my
oh my
goodness.
gosh, I tried to find you. He is so nice that I just dedicated the Girl Who Lived to him. And he's amazing. And like when they went to go make The Girl Who Lived. I wrote the screenplay and it got pitched to Netflix right before COVID hit. Then COVID hit and everybody went
Mhm.
away. But right before that, the guy that's pitching it to Netflix says, has it ever been on TV? And I'm like, well, it's won 6 awards. And
Yeah.
he's like, I know, but it has never been on TV. I go, what book's on TV? Like, unless they're burning it or like Harry Potter. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm like, no. And he goes, oh, that's too bad. And he goes, I'm meeting with the guy this afternoon. And I'm like, oh, I'll pray about it being on TV by this afternoon. So then my nephew, he texts me a picture with Seth Meyers, who is Late Show with Seth Meyers, holding
Yeah.
up my book. And I
Oh,
go,
wow.
I haven't talked to anybody this. How can he punk me if I haven't told anybody?
Yeah.
So I call up my brother, and my nephew's in the Peace Corps. And my brother goes, you'll never believe this. He goes, Johnny was in the airport, and he's a young, very handsome Italian gentleman. And he saw this girl reading, and he goes over and he goes, hey, what are you reading? And she goes, The Girl Who Lived by Christopher Grace. And he's like, my uncle wrote that book. And she's
That's
like,
right.
I want to come online. He goes, no, seriously. He goes, where did you get it? She goes, why did you pick it up? She goes, I saw it on TV last night. And so I go and I look, I send the picture, in the clip to the guy, and he's just sitting down to the guy from Netflix. And he goes, how is this possible? I go, God. I mean, why? I go,
Yeah.
tell me how that's not. And it's like one thing after
Yeah.
another.
I'm hearing from you is that you prayerfully step out in faith, but like it's the two sides of the same coin, right? Like you pray for God to intervene and do what he wants to do with this. And then you just keep walking forward and doing the next right thing you know to do.
And
And
that's what it is, and that's what
yeah.
God Billy Graham said, "Pray like it's all up to God, work like it's all up to you," and I know some people don't like that, but God's given me my marching orders,
Yeah.
so, like, I'll put out a book, and then I'm right to work on the next book, and usually I'm working on,
Yeah.
like, 4 books at the same time, because that way I don't have writer's block, and I can keep moving, and there's so much to do with, like, the marketing. That's another thing, stay current. If you plug in, you'll stay current because the
Mm,
trend switches. Facebook changes its algorithm if you're
right.
advertising on it. Amazon changes it and they have a new program.
Right.
You really need to have that marketing hat. And what I do is I use Focus as a program because I get like ADHD and I don't work on something for like a half an hour because
Right.
somebody gave me the movie reference. They said, you'll sit your butt in the chair for 2 hours to watch a movie.
Yeah.
So I go, time to read my emails, 2
Yeah.
hours, and I'll put 2 hours to it. Time to
Mhm.
do this part of marketing. Time to research, like, one of the things I really need to focus on now is my mailing list, and so when you asked
Mhm.
about, like, tips, mailing list is the biggest tip because nobody can take it away from you.
So true.
Nobody can take it, you have the power.
I
I
need
don't
to
care
hear
about.
that. I'm so bad about emails. They're like the lowest priority on my list, but it's true. It's true.
It
It's
it it
where
is for me
it needs
too,
to be built up.
and
Yeah.
I need to clear mine out, and for some reason, I got, like, on, like, the blacklisted mailing list. Like I said, A lot of the computers hate me. Like I've been kicked out of the Amazon program. I can't tell you how many times by the computer. And it's
Yeah.
all on a mistake. Like I had one book get listed as adult and you had to certify you're 18 and plus to look at it. I'm like, there's nothing in it. There's no
Hmm.
swearing. It's not even PG-13 technically, I say P13 because I have like everybody from like
Well, because it's
Godheads
murder.
reading it, so it's definitely PG-13.
Yeah.
But you need to stay, you need to stay up on it. You need to you stay current. You need to do the things that you don't want to do. So
Mhm.
if you really want to be an author and you want to do it yourself, so many people want to turn it right over to a marketing company. You can't tell if somebody's ripping you off if you don't know something about it. Well,
Yeah.
now God is so awesome. I have a house. I went without a house for the longest time and living in an apartment because I went on the layoff mill. I worked at Target and almost got laid off,
Mhm.
and I was stacking boxes and I'm not looking down at any job. But I mean, I put myself through college. I had 2 degrees, communication and computer science. I had a great resume and I could not get a job. The
Mhm.
door would not open. So then I'm at Target and they're laying off people and I had to take unboxing the truck at night. And this is in Boston. There's no heat in the truck. You had to
Oh
wear a
no.
t-shirt. It was the hottest job and I'm a little fat guy. And I'm like, ah, like, this is so hard. God, what are you trying to teach me? Did I do something?
Mhm.
I'm sorry if I did. But it's all those lessons. God says you're gonna get trials. You're going
Mhm.
to go through hardship, and we're supposed to endure the hardships. Not like
Yeah.
whine and complain, but endure it. So a lot of this stuff I got stories from.
As far as different marketing things that have worked for you, you're talking about your mailing list. That's been an important thing. I'm
Yep.
assuming advertising is something that.
Advertising is, and it's has and it hasn't. Right
Okay.
now, I'm totally having to relearn and do the advertising
'Cause
myself
it feels like it
because
changed.
it did. Well, my wife did all my advertising, and she was a genius, and she hurt her back, and
Oh,
then she had to start. Then it was like one of those things where she wanted to do it, and I didn't want to take away her lollipop and get into it, so it kinda let it run, and that's something that you shouldn't do is kinda let them go,
yeah.
and I try to be an encourager, and that was a fault on mine, and then I hate it, so it wasn't a hard thing for me to let it go, so I don't wanna act all vocal because I hate it, but
Yeah.
now I'm taking classes in it. Kindlepreneur has a great class on Amazon
Yep.
Ads. I'm going to there's a Amazon counselor that I hired, but I just
Okay.
started with them, so I can't recommend them.
Mm.
I'm very Italian, so if I'm gonna vouch for somebody,
They better be
and
good.
that's because I had people vouch for advertising other authors, and then I went, "They're not doing anything," and I'm
Mhm.
hemorrhaging money when I looked at it,
Yeah.
and then I went back to the person, and they stopped using them, and I'm like, "You know what?
Yeah.
You should have told me
Yeah.
that you didn't have a
Yeah.
good experience because you recommended them to me."
So
And
true.
one of the best ways not to get ripped off is to get an understanding of what it actually takes for the job. Like, even
Right.
if you look it up and don't worry about like asking people questions. Like so many people are like, oh, I don't want to get them mad. Like we had the cable guys come and they were gonna run a cable, a high-speed cable underneath the driver to the house. And then my wife looks out and she's like, that's an orange cable. I thought the high-speed cables were supposed to be blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I don't want to tell the cable guys that, and
You're
then I
not doing
went,
your job
wait a
right.
minute. I do everything on the internet.
Yeah.
If I don't say anything and my internet's really bad,
Yeah.
that's like a lifelong live. So I said, why are you using the R? I'm not telling you how to do your job, but I'm just asking. And the guy's like, oh my gosh, we're using the wrong cable. It would have been, I'm like, so I'm so glad I said
Yeah.
something.
This is your product. This is your livelihood. Like, you need to be asking the questions and making sure that you're educated. And I do think it takes a little extra work for writers to get educated on these things because when we're looking at writing resources, they often just focus on the craft of writing. They don't
Yeah.
focus on advertising. They don't focus on, social media marketing. They don't focus on, manufacturing even. There you
Yep. I'm
go.
going to give a little plug for her book.
Okay, what can you read for the people who
And,
are listening on
it's
podcast?
Amazon Ads for Indie Authors, a how-to guide from an industry expert by Janet Margot. I don't know. But she did the other half of the tutorial on Kindlepreneur. So there are
Okay.
so many people out there. And sometimes it might be like you could take a class that's excellent and then it not be for you. Like
Mhm.
this next guy, like I had a math teacher that I couldn't stand. I couldn't get it. And other people were like, oh, he's great. But then I went to another math teacher and he had a way of teaching me. So
Right.
sometimes you've got to look around. And like you said about spending money, I always try, and I do this at home too. Before I buy a tool, before I do anything, I go, has God already given me what I need?
Mm,
Let me go look and see if I have this tool. Because remember, we're stewards.
yes.
So I say first, is there a free resource? And then the more you know, like I think G.I. Joe was knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Yeah. The more you know, then you can tell somebody if they're ripping you off or not.
That's true.
And you could say, "Hey, wait a minute, you don't need that." Like, I had somebody come to me and they're like, "Oh, well, I paid for my ISBN and this other company for my ebook." I go, you don't need. You get a
Yeah.
free one." And they were getting totally ripped off, and the people were juicing them. And then they said, "Well, I don't know." And I said, "You could have asked.
Yeah.
You could
Yeah.
go onto a writing group."
And now that we even have if you're, sometimes Google, it can lead you down like 50 different million answers and you're trying to like sift through all of them. But like a good place to just start is Chat GPT. Like just put the question into there, get a good start there. And then you at least can get the vocabulary to then know what to search for. Sometimes we just don't even know what it is that we're trying to figure out.
Yeah,
So
but you know what? Oh,
you
sorry.
don't know until you get in the middle of it. You have to go into that messy middle and start pulling at all the different threads and following them so that you can get the bigger picture. I am so glad that you brought that up because I think sometimes we as writers can get so narrow focused on like we'll put how to publish a book and it's all about how to build out a story. But that's
Yeah.
not really publishing, that's writing the book, that's creating a product, not actually selling a product, and there's 2 different sides to it, and it's almost like we get halfway there, and then we're wondering why this thing isn't getting into the hands of our readers, and it's like, well, you didn't learn the second half of this whole thing, and so I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, I do very good with checklists, but it's another reason to get plugged in. I don't know. Now
Mhm.
I'm going, I probably should just write something up sometime, but
Well, you got all this experience, you should,
yeah,
like
like
I know,
boom, boom,
it's
boom.
like you need another thing on your plate, right?
Wait, and then another thing, you don't have to read it all. Like you said, my sister gave me the best advice when I had kids. She said, never open the closet and say, what do you want to wear? Because they go,
Mhm.
there's just too many choices. Go, do you want the
Right.
red shirt or the blue shirt?
Mhm.
So you look and you pick a book, cull through like 10, but then pick a book, a
Yeah,
plan, a thing,
right.
and then go in that because people have different methodologies. I could always send you links that I use. There are some people that I found over the years, like, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. He did a book called Let's Get Digital, Let's Get Visible. He's got a
Okay.
series like that and he updates them.
Oh,
The
that's
guy from
good.
Kindlepreneur
Yeah,
updates his information. Yeah, but he's got great stuff, and the thing is, you really gotta put your nose to the grindstone, put the time in, don't get overwhelmed, go
mhm,
and do it. But it's two separate things. It's not, and you hit on that. It's not one
yeah,
thing. People go, I want to publish a book. Well, first you need a book, and then you need to publish it. Now you can
right,
work on both the same time, but I break up like I write hot in the morning, so I write in the
mhm,
morning. That's my writing time. I am writing, I'm doing my gig, and
right.
then as my creative juices like run low, then I switch over to answering email, marketing.
Do you do book launches? Like, do you put
Do
a lot
I
of, like, campaign behind launching your book, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, I just did my first one where it was like, the book launch, and then there's a course you could take called Book Launch Blueprint, which
Mhm,
has a lot of resources too.
right,
So that was, varying it up. And I say a lot of the stuff is new for me because my wife did it. So I'm doing the Girl Who Lived Too with book launch blueprint. I got a Discord server and I got these people and it was great. I was doing Zoom calls and meeting people because there's still a lot that I want to do, like with Facebook. And that's another thing. You really need to put yourself out there and don't worry about it.
Mm,
because I was hesitant. One, because I get a lot of weird fan mail. I really do. And I don't mind people writing to me from prison and stuff like that. But I have actual like killers write to me and they're like, "You're in my
yeah.
head." And I'm
Oh
like,
my
I
gosh.
don't want to be in your head. I really don't. And I mean, like, I go to
But
the
that's when you know
jail.
you made the character really believable, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I go to the jail and I do all that stuff, in the research, and I'll talk to anybody, but some stuff gets a little weird, but I'm trying to get more out there, but you really need to do it. And like before, I was hesitant about sharing my addiction story
Mhm.
about going through rehab because people will talk down to you. And I'm human and I don't like it. And I kind
Which
of,
is interesting because I noticed that your Amazon bio on your Amazon Central didn't mention any of that, but on your website, it did mention it, and I wondered if that was very intentional or if
yeah,
it was
no, the
just that you
thing,
hadn't updated it
I,
yet or
I was in rehab before my kids were born and they're now
Mhm,
in their 20s. And I went through 5, and it got to the point where people were talking down to me because I'm an
mhm,
a and then I it's tough, I get very Italian where I'm like, "Really?" I don't esteem myself higher than anybody, but when
mhm.
you trying to esteem yourself higher than me, you got an issue. And then I talked to a woman and I shared that I went through the 5 rehabs, and she started crying, and she's like, "You're giving me hope about my son."
No.
And I'm like, "You know what? God did this for me." God set me free from that. And it's kind of like I never used to share my success because I was almost
Yeah,
embarrassed by it. And I'm like, you know what? I mean, I was the guy that was kicked out of English class all the time. I'm like, I would never have thought that I would be a writer. I love it. I was such an avid reader, but I never dreamed
yeah.
about being a writer. And I had such a love for it. But now I go, you know what? What kind of friend am I? Like, if I had been treating a friend like I had been treating Jesus, I wouldn't be much of a
Mhm,
friend and I wouldn't have him as a friend. But I'm like, just like, "This is it. If you wanna try to look down at me because I had been addicted to booze, look down at me. I don't care."
yeah.
And it's one of those things, and it's come back so much from that. And I've always been really open in the writing, like, like,
Mhm.
pick pricking a vein and bleeding out on the page,
Bleeding out on the page, right?
and I'm a crier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though they say beards make you look, like, angrier, and my kids tell me I have a grumpy
Mm.
resting face, but I'll be writing and bawling
Mhm.
when I think that's important, and everybody has a story.
I love that. Yeah. I love the fact that you said that it's almost to a degree trusting by putting yourself out there, you're trusting in the truth of what God has done for you, what he'll continue to do for you, and that he'll use that story for his purposes and for his glory. And I think that, like you said, you have a lot of interesting fame now. But ultimately trusting the Lord with that. Like he
Yep.
put you in this place and in this time for such a reason. And you're just walking that out and trusting that he's going to do something with it. That's really, really powerful. And I think that I wanna make the point that you're not writing stories that are overtly Christian. You're writing stories from a Christian worldview, and that
Yes.
story is still coming through, and it's sometimes easier to justify putting time and energy into telling stories if they're gonna do some kind of preaching or converting, you know? And sometimes it's a little harder, I think, to be like, "Well, God's calling me to just tell this secular story," right? Just to tell this story, and sometimes it's hard for us to have confidence in that calling, right? That confidence that he can use even this. But it's not that he's using the book, he's using you writing the book. And I think we have to remember that we're being called to walk in obedience. It's not about the outcome, it's about the input that we're putting into it.
It is, and that was so eloquently put, and then he'll open our eyes too. Like, I have this scene in The Girl Who Lived where Faith's in the hospital and the minister's wife comes and the minister's wife wants to pray with her. But Faith
Mhm.
doesn't want to pray with her right then. She's like, so she's reaching for the morphine and the minister's wife thinks she's reaching for her hand. So she just takes her hand to pray. And then some people can relate to that. Cause I remember
Mhm.
like when I was in the hospital and I had my knee up and I hadn't complained about anything. And I knew my dancing career was over and I got an acceptance letter that I was accepted to a world dance tour
Mm.
when I was in the hospital. And I hadn't complained at all. And we had this new minister. My mom's like, the minister wants to talk to you and he came to visit you. And I'm like, Mom, I'm not up for it. And she's
Right.
like, he came all the way here. So the guy comes in and he looks at me and he goes, you know, Chris, a lot more people are in pain out there than you are. And I looked at him, I go, you're going to be one of them. And he could have misspoke. He could have done the thing,
Mhm.
but people have been there and it's important for us to reach out. And then God uses it. Like I started drinking when I was 16 years old and I got in a lot of trouble with the law and I quit. And then after my knee, I relapsed and I didn't realize why until I wrote The Girl
Mhm.
Who Lived. Because of the morphine, I got
Mhm.
addicted to the morphine. I got addicted to the painkillers. When the painkillers ran out, I replaced them with booze. And you
Yeah.
see that so much now. And so
Yeah.
instead of me hiding my story, people go, oh, that's what happened to me. And it turns on
Yeah.
light. So I'm like, no, I'm done. Like I started
Yeah.
writing and I thought I needed to write like Hemingway and I needed to write, you know, uh,
Another
it's
person addicted to booze, right?
yeah, but
Right?
you know what?
Another
I write
person
like
who's having to deal with addictions and whatnot. But yeah, to your point, write
yeah,
like yourself, write like who God made you to be with your story, with your everything coming into it. Well, I know we could keep going on because you have had so many experiences. And I think that you have come to a place where you are just really confident in who you are and what God has called you to do. And I appreciate the fact that the wisdom that you've been sharing with us, and namely the fact that pointing out that we can do all the things, but ultimately we need to submit everything to the Lord and ask Him for His direction on it and His hand of blessing on it too. But as we're beginning to wrap up, I would love to get any final words you have for the person who's trying to navigate this whole business side of being a writer, and selling and marketing and all things that come along with that. What final words of advice do you have for somebody in that position?
get plugged in and ask a bunch of questions. That email list is so important. You really have to put yourself out there. You have to remember, like, even just general business advice will help you out so much. And there's business communities in town. In every town I've gone to, there's a business community. And be like Carlos the Jackal, where you go to people that have been before you that are, retired and they have time. Get yourself plugged in with mentors you can trust. Mentors are a huge thing that we don't do anymore. So find a
Mhm.
great mentor that you can plug in, but get a resource. Like you have a wonderful resource for people to reach out to, where people
Mhm.
can reach out to you and go, hey, where can I go? Can you get me
Right.
started? But then dig in and entrench. We have a habit of looking for the perfect pill and we just want the pill. We want a pill to lose weight. We want a pill to be happy. We want a pill for this. And we
Yep.
just want the easy thing. And it's not. And my brother friend gave the best advice. He was at a gym and this guy goes over to him because they were big. And he goes, I want to get strong. What do I
Mhm.
do? And the guy goes, he picks up a weight and he goes, do that. It sounds
Do the
simple.
reps. Do the
Do
reps, right?
do the reps. So stop looking for the magic pill. Find the
Mhm.
thing that that works, and then as you go, you can look at fine tuning stuff. But
Right.
guaranteed, the basics are going to be the same. So get the basics down.
And
They're
that's
down.
true whether you're an indie author or you're traditionally published. You're gonna
Yeah.
have to do those basic things of having an email list, being on socials, putting yourself out there, doing the interviews, doing the ads, doing the whatever. You're gonna have to put the reps in, regardless of if you have a traditional publisher or not.
And most people want a traditional publisher because they think they're going to handle everything, and they're not going to. Just I
No.
hate to be the bearer of bad news, but like when I looked at the traditional publishing, that was another thing. It was what can you offer me for
Mhm.
taking most of my money. And it was like, we have a cover designer. I have a cover designer. We've got
Right.
an editor. I've got an editor.
Yeah.
Mm, I go, do you gonna do all the marketing? Not really. No, we only do it for the top little teeny percent.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're basically just taking all my money.
Which is like shocker because you're a best-selling author. You know what I mean? It is what it is. It's just kind of the status of our industry, and there's a million reasons why, and we won't get into those right now. But there are things that are working against authors when it comes to how the publishing industry is set up and where the world has gone as far as online marketing and production and all those things. But
Yes.
I wanted to give you an opportunity in case I didn't ask a question that led to something that you wanted to share. Is there anything else that you would want to make sure that our listeners hear from you before we sign off?
No, you've been awesome. I would just leave the parting note, pray about it, like it's all up to God and work like it's all up to you. Because I hear it that so many people go, God wants me to write the book. Well, if he really wants you to write the book, you better get busy because then he's
Mm,
going to call an accounting and go, okay, what you do? And you better
yeah.
go, okay, this is what I've done. And if you work hard, then, faithful in little things, you're going to be faithful in the bigger things and God can move more stuff to you. But sometimes he's waiting to see how you crawl, how you walk, and you've got to build that up, that strength
Yeah.
before he starts putting more on.
Right. Very true. Well, thank you, Christopher. I want to make sure that our listeners know where to find you and know where to get your books from. So, if you want to tell us where we can find you on your website and any socials and any other information that can help them get to your book.
Okay, awesome. You can go to ChristopherGrayson.com. I give out free books. So you can get some samples, like kind of driving the car and kicking the tires. Sign up for my newsletter and you'll find out about new stuff. And I get new books on there all the time. You can go to Amazon.com/Grayson Media, Greyson Media. And I got a store. It looks really neat, I think. You can write to me about anything you want. If you have questions, Rachel, she's just fabulous. So it's been
Thank
absolutely
you.
fabulous on here.
Thank you.
But there are lots of resources. You're not alone. And
Mm.
that's the biggest thing. So you're not alone and reach out to somebody.
Well, thank you again, Christopher, for being on our show today. And thank you to you, the listener, for joining us here. Join us next time as we continue the conversation on the business of Christian fiction. Bye.